Hello candidates, and welcome back to my channel. For those who don't know, my name is Michaela and I am the content creator behind KandidKayla.com. Here at this platform you're going to find everything that relates to the 8 dimensions of wellness. So we talk about physical wellness, we talk about lifestyle, we talk about spiritual wellness, and everything in between. So today I'm going to be talking all about my spiritual journey and really wrapping up the month by talking about my singleness in particular and what I know now that I wish I knew then. When I started kind of fiddling with dating, I was maybe I don't know, 15, 16 when I really first got my first crush where it was a big deal. It was a whole thing. I had crushes before. It was a mess before. I was super immature in middle school and elementary school when it came to liking people, and I had a lot of just weirdness, which I think is definitely normal because a lot of times we're not taught at that age how to deal with those types of emotions. But then once I was about 15 or so, I got my first crush where it was kind of okay, this is different. I don't really know how to feel, to the point where I was just kind of I don't really know, this is different. Anyway, so from now being 25 almost and 10 years later, I wanted to just share 5 things that I know now that I wish I knew then, and things that apply to everybody who's in their single season, but predominantly those who are young or in college or really trying to kind of navigate the single space or navigate the dating space. So yeah, let's get right into it. So the first thing that I know now that I wish I knew then was that it's a lot more complicated than just liking someone. So I thought growing up, I was always told when a man likes a woman or a boy likes a girl, and it was just one of those things, right? And then when I got to middle school, I realized it's so much more complicated than that. First of all, you got the entire LGBTQ population, and while I don't necessarily identify with that population, that does put a monkey wrench, especially now being 24 and 90% of America in my age gap for dating is sexually fluid. So now we're putting a monkey wrench into that with an entire population of people that you don't have access to, right? So if I like somebody who's gay, obviously they're not gonna like me back. So that's super complicated. And even among the remaining straight population, or population that would fall into the category of even liking me, it's so much more complicated than just 2 people liking each other. 2 people have to be on the same page, 2 people have to have the same goals, 2 people have to be on the same mission in life, and those missions have to align in order for a relationship to work. And that's not something that I was ever really taught, and I wish I would have, because then you wouldn't take somebody at 13 and 14 as seriously as you take somebody at maybe 30. The second thing that I wish I knew then that I definitely know now is that the heart is deceiving. And because the heart is deceiving, what's love got to do with it? So this goes back to my last point, in that it's so much more complicated than 2 people just liking each other. It's more complicated than 2 people falling in love with each other. Your heart is deceiving. That's biblical. And because of that, you're able to fall in love and out of love with somebody today, and tomorrow and the next day, and your mind and really your heart is never really made up. And so because of that, it's more than just love. It has to do with compatibility. It has to do with what 2 people are willing to put in, willpower, choice. I think choice has a lot to do with it, and that's just on a dating scale. I mean, that applies to marriage as well. I think a sub point of this also is that it's okay to be a sexual being. God has made you in such that way, but it's not all right to be sexual, right? So for your being to be sexual. So the sin is when you make up in your heart and in your mind that you're gonna have sex with someone, or you do the acts of sex or whatever and you guys aren't married. That's the sin. But for a long time I thought that it was a sin to really kind of have a crush on somebody, because there was so much taboo and so much strain around two people liking each other when I grew up, at least, especially in the church. The way that I was taught is like, oh, it's supposed to be a secret and you're supposed to like kind of do things in hiding because it wasn't acceptable to be who you are out in the open. And it was just a lot less heartache when you do things out in the open. And yeah, love's got nothing to do with how you two really treat each other. It's a daily choice, and having that pressure from the outside sources to not be sexual beings even though you are sexual beings, and to not be attracted even though you're supposed to be attracted, it's too much. And debunk all of that. None of that is really necessary. Just be upfront and communicate. Also, when you're in a situation, just make sure that you have on perceptive eyes when you go into a dating relationship. I think a lot of times we fall in love, or we choose somebody and our heart falls in love before we're ever in a situation with them. And as a result, what happens is you get disappointed when you get to know the person for who they really are. I think true love, as we want to classify it as, is when two people come together and they're learning each other and they grow together. That love grows for each other. You didn't make up your mind before ever going on the first date that this was going to be your husband or your wife. Number 3, I wish I'd have known there's nothing wrong with me. I've only come to this place within the last 3 years or so where I kind of realized that there's nothing wrong with who I am. I offer a lot to the table, and I think that there's a whole lot of stress because of what society wants. And really, once you turn 21 and you are in the church, they immediately want to rush you off as a woman to be married. And the fact of the matter is, not everybody's called to that. I personally didn't want that. I didn't really want to be married at 21, 22. I wanted to experience life and do some things. My parents got married at 22. They were really young, and they both told me growing up, and they're still adamant on it today, that they wish they would have waited because there were some things that they both wanted to do and that they wanted to learn prior to getting married. It also didn't help that they had me within a year of getting married, but I say that to say that there was some growing that I wanted to do, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with the fact that I have standards either. There's nothing wrong with the fact that I am who I am. And I think there's a lot of shame around the working woman in the church. There's a lot of shame around the intelligent woman in the church. There's a lot of shame around the career-driven and career-minded woman. And not saying that I don't ever want to get married, but what I am saying is that it's just not important right now. Also, there's nothing wrong with saving your space and saving your time. The Bible says to guard your heart, right? And the only way to guard your heart is to ensure that you're choosy and you're picky with who you allow in your space and who you allow in your heart. I had a whole lot of people in my space in college that probably shouldn't have been there, and thankfully I knew how to guard my heart, so I wasn't attached to people in the way that I think others would have wanted me to be. And yeah, just understanding that there's nothing wrong with you for not trusting people. There's nothing wrong with you for ensuring that you're good first, because that's what God has called you to do. I said it at the beginning of the video, I'm saying it again now. At this point, you no longer want your kids in the room, but I'm finna get real, and this is KandidKayla, so y'all already know. But dick and punani are not the answer. So I had to put this point in here, and I'm going to explain it in just a second, but it's so important that we get this through our brains, especially college age kids. I think it's so important that you remember this one point, and that's dick and punani are not the answers. Let me tell you why. If you're sad, you need to fix that. If you're happy, you need to enjoy that. And if you're confused or bored, then you need to go handle that situation in and of yourself. Go do something besides laying down with somebody. The gateway to your soul is often between your legs. And when you come together with somebody who is not your spouse, you are not opening doors to things that you are not ready to handle. Things that will carry into every subsequent relationship that you have. And so because of that, the answer to everything is not going to find somebody to hook up with. It needed to be said. I knew that before, but I questioned it a lot in college. I had somebody specifically say to me, a man, multiple men actually, say that,
oh, you're angry, you're bitter, you're this, you're that, and all you need is some dick. You need somebody to, pound that out of you and da 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 da.
And that is not it. I wasn't angry or anything like that. I just had standards, and you're going to treat me with such standards, and I still have those same standards, and the people around me love me for it. So if you are not meant to be around that space, then sweetheart, if you can't elevate, you're not meant to ride the elevator. Goodbye. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So with that, to all of the younger people, to all the people my age, to all the people, anybody who need to hear it, it's not the answer. Stop looking for validation in other people and start getting the validation for yourself, because once you have that, sweetheart, you'll be able to walk into a relationship and actually be able to give something besides your physical body parts. How about that? So that goes into my last point, which is number 5. It's nice to be desired, but being respected is unparalleled. So I had a lot of people that I would consider friends to this day. Anybody that I've ever talked to in any sort of romantic way, I can hit them up and I can call them up at any time, and that's because we have a mutual respect. And I was talking to my mom about this point, and she makes a good point. I think because I haven't slept with any of those people, there's a certain level of respect regardless, because they respect the fact that I'm choosing to keep myself. But I think also because I treat them with respect, I didn't play them, I'm very upfront and very honest about my desires and what I want, and I will tell you if I'm not feeling something. Like, I'm just that brutally honest kind of person, and I think that's more important than becoming whoever the other person wants you to be. So being a female, I know a lot of my female friends, a lot of times, and I've been guilty of it in the past too, we turn into whatever the other person wants us to be, in the sense that, like, if we're talking to a guy and he says that he likes girls who have dyed hair, a lot of us will go dye our hair. And that's an extreme example, but to a certain extent, if a man doesn't like natural hair, we're going to start pressing our hair more and things of that nature. And I don't think that's necessary. I think when a man can accept you for who you are, that's who needs to be in your space. And I have plenty of male friends that I started off talking to, and others that are just my friends and we're just cool. But at the end of the day, respect is mutual across the board. Even with my girlfriends, respect is mutual, and I would take that any day over being desired by somebody. I think that we put too much focus and too much emphasis on sex and who has the best body and all of this stuff, but at the end of the day, sex appeal, it's a mental thing, honey. And at the end of the day, if you know who you are, you feel good about yourself when you look in the mirror and you're accepting who's in the mirror, that is unparalleled, because you will respect yourself in such a way that everybody else around you has to respect you. And it will keep you from a world of heartache. It will keep you from a world of bleeding out onto other people, so hurting other people, because hurt people. And knowing your worth and having that value within yourself is unparalleled to anybody ever desiring you. So those are just 5 things that I know now at 24, turning 25, that I wish I would have known at 14, going into 15, when I first started really dabbling with crushes and things like that. And I'm so proud of my growth. I think the journey is important. Everybody has their own journey, but at the same time, there are things that God has written in His Word that we specifically don't have to go through. And I don't think that we have to go through the ebbs and flows of heartache. I don't think that God ever expected that for us as His people. But we have to know how to navigate the spaces that we're in. In the biblical times, there was no dating or courting or anything like that. So because of that, I think we just all have to have wisdom and discernment and truth for ourselves as to what works for us. So all the 5 things that I just said are things that I wish I would have known, and things that work for me, and things that, to me, based on what I read in my Bible, are biblically sound. And I would recommend that you go do the same for yourself. If you're a young person and you're just starting to date, do a Bible study, do some reading in your word, and really determine what it is that you want for yourself, how you want yourself to be treated, how you treat yourself, and what things are good, bad, and indifferent for you, so that when the time does come that you're faced with certain obstacles, you'll have a clear-cut decision made in your heart of what is right and wrong, so that you don't end up putting yourself through pain that you don't have to put yourself through. And if you're an older person, just really understanding a lot of people weren't taught. So go get the teaching for yourself. And it's really not that hard. I think Mike Todd's relationship goals is going viral because it's the simplest possible understanding of this information, and nobody ever went and took the time to do the research for themselves. So if you go and you do the research for yourselves, you guys will realize that there's so much out there, but there's a clear-cut path for yourself. As much as they want to say that relationships are ambiguous, because they, to a certain extent, are, there is still a right and a wrong as it relates to what you want and what you will tolerate. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. This was an exciting series for me this month, really talking about singleness. I will put the links in the description box of the previous video, as well as our previous blog post concerning singleness, and just really share with you guys a little bit more here and there, maybe one post a month that talks about my singleness and my singleness journey, and just really expressing with you guys, for all my single people, ain't nothing wrong with it, shawty. Just live, and God will send you whoever is supposed to be in your space, and who's not, they're not. So yeah, thank you guys so much. I'm again really appreciative of your time, and until next week, goodbye.